I'm happy to announce that the Blue Beetle movie has revolutionized the film industry. Not only is this the greatest comic book movie of the year, this might be the greatest comic book movie of all time. Move over Avengers Infinity War, move over The Dark Knight, cause there's a new sheriff in town, and he wears a scarab on his back. And one day when I become a grandparent, I can't wait to sit on my rocking chair and tell my grandkids how I had the privilege and the honor of seeing the Blue Beetle movie in theaters. Are y'all still there? All right, cool. In all seriousness, let's get this actual review started. I mean, I know I was joking, but you know, the movie was still pretty good. Blue Beetle is the newest addition to the superhero movie genre and is also technically the very first movie in the brand new DCU helmed by James Gunn. And while other recent DC movies are gathering headlines for, the wrong reasons, it feels like Blue Beetle got pushed to the side in a major way. I mean, I feel like I haven't seen a trailer for this movie in months, which honestly is not a bad thing because if I'm being completely honest, the trailers kind of made me think this movie was gonna be mid, which it still kinda is, but in a good way. All right, I'm confusing myself. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. If you're still with me, leave a comment below and let me know, have you seen the Blue Beetle movie yet? Are you planning on going to see it? Or do you even care at all? So right off the gate, I did not walk into this movie with a laundry list of expectations. In fact, with how down I've been on the quality of recent projects, I just wanted to walk in, be entertained, and leave feeling like I didn't waste my money. And to that point, I'd say this movie worked. I feel like Blue Beetle did the opposite of the Flash movie, and in this case, that's a very good thing. This film doesn't feel overly bloated, it flows really well from scene to scene, and I gotta say, after dealing with so many projects recently that are obsessed with utilizing the multiverse, it just feels nice to be able to roll back a little bit to the good old days of superhero origin stories that weren't trying to tell these grandiose level stories with massive world-changing complications, and instead it just revolves around a likable protagonist who just wants to keep his family safe and protected. I also gotta say, when you have a movie as bloated as The Flash that had, dare I say, almost a $500 million budget, and you compare that to Blue Beetle, which even after the monetary boost it got from the executives of DC, it still was only about $120 million to make. And I feel pretty confident in saying this, but the CGI in Blue Beetle ran circles around The Flash. Nothing's truly jaw-dropping or awe-inspiring, but I feel like this movie actually tried to make its CGI look good. I can't believe I'm sitting here talking about how proud I am of a 2023 superhero movie that met the bare minimum for computer-generated effects. What a time to be alive. Also, I'm so glad that the people that worked on this movie used a practical suit as the base, instead of pulling literally every recent movie ever and trying to CGI the whole darn thing. It helps a whole lot with grounding the suit in a little more realism. And as I mentioned earlier, I feel like this movie truly benefits from being a small-scale story. Every now and then you just get tired of universe-ending stakes, and it's refreshing to have a more grounded story. Well, I guess about as grounded as can be considering the protagonist utilizes a symbiotic scarab, capable of creating some crazy weapons of mass destruction, but here we are. Now with the simplistic story of Blue Beetle, that also creates a potential negative that I could see a lot of people not vibing with. And that being, it's a generic superhero story that we've seen 100 million times in so many different movies and TV shows. I definitely got the vibes throughout most of this film that it just felt like a melting pot where you sprinkled in countless other superhero movies that have come before it. I saw some Iron Man, I saw some Spider-Man Homecoming, Amazing Spider-Man 2, I saw Shazam, I saw Venom, I saw some Fast and the Furious. You wanna know why I said Fast and Furious? Because it's all about, say it with me, family.
I don't have friends, I got family.
Because man, family is the driving force of this film. It's a beautiful thing when done right, and I think this takes just the right amount of inspiration from Shazam to create a very likable family that's full of individual people that feel unique and they don't feel pushed to the wayside. I gotta say, the highlights for me was George Lopez as the weird uncle and the grandma, who I won't spoil anything, but you're definitely gonna want to keep an eye on her throughout the film. Trust me. It is definitely refreshing to have a family portrayed in a film as not hating each other. Yeah, they're not gonna get along all the time, but there is no question that the Reyes family absolutely love each other and would do anything for each other. On that note, I also gotta say that while this movie doesn't have a lot of extremely emotional scenes, there's this one byline, and I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but something tragic happens about halfway through the film, and the family is forced to band together and push through in order to achieve a specific goal. By the time we reach the end of the movie, right as we feel like things are about to wrap up, one of the family members mentions that, you know what, it's okay. We can now grieve together. It just was one of those random moments that really hit me. Most of the time with movies that involve a family experiencing a loss, they don't really touch on the fact that they have to suspend their grieving in order to achieve a task or mission. But yet in Blue Beetle, you have that moment where you're like, oh shoot, they really didn't fully have time to process what happened. And now they're allowing themselves time to grieve. that was a really beautiful moment, and you don't see that kind of subtlety in a lot of superhero movies recently. Well, yeah, sometimes the banter can be a little too corny, and I think George Lopez, while he was hilarious, was also one of those like unhinged, completely loopy characters that was just having the time of his life, and if that kind of stuff annoys you, you may not like him as much. But I think when you put them all together, they work really well.
I think he likes me.
But while that does take some of the spotlight off of the main character, I have to shout out Xolo Maridueña for his performance in this. From the start, I just love the charm and the energy that he brings to this role as Jaime Reyes. While he was casted before James Gunn took over the DCU, I really hope we see more of him in the future, regardless of how this movie performs. In a way, I kinda got young Tom Holland from Captain America Civil War vibes, in both his screen presence and also the potential that he has to show up in other future DCU projects. I haven't really talked much about the Scarab itself, because we don't get too much development when it comes to its intentions. It seems like it's sentient, almost symbiotic. But again, what's supposed to be just an origin story for the Scarab and for Jaime Reyes, I was not disappointed with how they utilized it. There was at least 3 to 4 creative action set pieces where we saw the Scarab being used in so many different ways, whether it was transforming his hands into pulse cannons and blasting military people off of their feet, or literally just being able to create any sort of weapon with his mind, which yes, includes a gigantic broadsword at the end.
That's what I've been waiting for.
As for the villains, there's technically 2, with Victoria Cord being the primary villain. And I gotta say, there is not much depth to her villain role. She's basically just a racist corporate Karen.
Excuse me, sir, this is private property.
And I know that she was written to just be evil for evil's sake, but I don't find those kind of villains interesting if they don't give me anything memorable to remember them by. Now, Carapax is also technically a villain in this film, and he provides more of the physical threat to fight Blue Beetle. I like that they actually tried to give him some character development, especially more towards the end, but in their attempt to give him some agency, it actually just made me wish that we got some of that earlier in the film, because for the most part, I'd say for like 70 to 80% of this film, he's just the quiet grunt who just does what he's told. It just makes his character arc feel a tad undercooked by the time we reach the finale. If you're wondering why I'm so high on this movie when 5 years ago I would have been ripping it apart, it's because recently I've just felt that the superhero genre as a whole has not been living up to its expectations. And after taking some time to really refocus how I see this genre as a whole, it really did help me walk into Blue Beetle with 0 expectations. And also it made me walk out of the theater going, you know what? I just spent 2 hours watching a movie that I was entertained by, and I shouldn't take that for granted. Even though I know that every single DC movie that's come out this year is doomed to fail, I really hope this film succeeds. Because while it is just your average paint-by-number superhero flick, there's just something about it. And hey, it seems like the light might be at the end of the tunnel, because now we get to be introduced to James Gunn's new DCU. Well, after Aquaman 2 comes out later. Oh gosh. That movie's gonna flop, isn't it? Yeah. Again, don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of the Blue Beetle movie. Or actually, go ahead and let me know what you think about the future of the DCU as a whole. Are you feeling really positive about it? Do you think it's gonna suck? How confident are you in James Gunn's leadership? Let me know all your thoughts below, and I can't wait to get a discussion going with y'all. But with all that out of the way, I wanna thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.